Welcome back to the channel where we remember the women who once lit up the screen, the stage, and the hearts of millions. Today, we reflect on a deeply emotional chapter as we pay tribute famous female celebrities who passed away in their 80s. These women lived long, full lives, but even decades of memories can't ease the pain of goodbye. Behind the smiles and achievements were personal battles, quiet struggles, and moments of strength that often went unseen. Some left us after long illnesses, others with barely a warning, but each one carried a lifetime of resilience, grace, and inspiration. They were not just famous, they were mothers, daughters, mentors, and icons who shaped the world in their own way. Today, we remember their final days, the truths behind their passing, and the legacies that will forever echo in the hearts they touched. Kim Woodburn, the outspoken and unforgettable television personality who passed away on June 16, 2025, at the age of 83 after a short illness that took her quietly but left so many devastated. Her passing was confirmed by her husband Peter, who simply wrote, "My wonderful, beautiful Kim passed away last night. God bless my love." And those few words carried the weight of a lifetime. Though the exact details of her illness weren't shared publicly, it was clear that her final days were spent away from the spotlight, surrounded by those who truly loved her. Her management described her as incredibly strong and deeply caring, and her co-star Aggie McKenzie, who worked with her on How Clean Is Your House, said Kim had been a tormented soul who endured more than most could imagine, yet pushed through with fierce strength. Behind her sharp words and bold personality was someone who had survived deep pain that started early in her life. Born Patricia Mary McKenzie in 1942 in East New Hampshire, she had a heartbreaking childhood filled with physical and emotional abuse, including unspeakable trauma from her parents. She left home at just 16 and worked as a cleaner to survive, later changing her name to Kim after actress Kim Novak, hoping to leave behind the shadows of her past. Her life changed dramatically when, in her 60s, while working as a housekeeper, she was discovered for a TV show that turned her into a household name. That show was How Clean Is Your House, and Kim's no-nonsense attitude, signature fun, and brutal honesty made her instantly recognizable. But her fame wasn't just about cleaning. She became a voice, sometimes controversial, sometimes comforting, always real. She appeared on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, and Celebrity Big Brother, where her emotional outbursts and cutting lines turned into viral moments, yet they always hinted at a deeper struggle underneath. Kim's life wasn't about perfection, it was about surviving, about showing up, even when the world had been cruel. She wrote a powerful memoir, Unbeaten, where she spoke openly about her pain, including the loss of her stillborn child at 23, which she carried alone for decades. She lived many lives, cleaner, model, social worker, TV star, but through them all, she stayed raw and unapologetic. The world knew her as the Queen of Clean. But to those who looked closer, Kim Woodburn was a woman who fought through darkness with grit and honesty. In her final years, she was still adored by many for her boldness, her humor, and the authenticity that made her unforgettable. Her husband Peter now grieves the loss of not just a celebrity, but his soulmate. And for the rest of us, we've lost a woman who turned her pain into presence and left behind a legacy built not just on bleach and banter, but on survival. Nina Kuscsik, a true pioneer in women's long-distance running, who passed away on June 8, 2025, at the age of 86, after a long, heartbreaking battle with Alzheimer's disease and recent complications from pneumonia that led to respiratory failure during her final days at a hospital in Brookhaven, New York. For years, she had struggled with memory loss and declining health, a slow and painful goodbye to a woman who once ran faster and further than most believed a woman ever could. Nina wasn't just an athlete, she was a fighter who changed the course of history for women in sports. She was the first woman to officially win the Boston Marathon in 1972, and before that, she had to run races unofficially because women weren't even allowed to compete. Born in Brooklyn on January 2, 1939, Nina was a natural athlete from the start. She was a New York State champion in roller skating, speed skating, and cycling before she ever discovered her love for running. It all began when her bike broke, and she decided to jog instead. And that one decision changed her life and opened doors for thousands of women who came after her. She raised 3 children mostly on her own while working as a patient representative in a hospital, all while training and running over 80 marathons. But her legacy isn't just about medals or finish lines, it's about breaking barriers. She was one of the 6 who sat, a group of women who protested unfair race rules by sitting at the starting line of the New York City Marathon until they were allowed to run with the men. She lobbied the AAU to change the rules that limited how far women could race, presented medical data to prove women were capable of distance running, and helped pave the way for the women's marathon to be added to the Olympics in 1984. She ran the Boston Marathon multiple times before it was legal for her to do so, hiding or running without a bib just to prove she belonged. In 1977, she set an American record for the 50-mile run, and she even won the Empire State Building run-up 3 years in a row. Nina inspired generations with her quiet strength and determination. Even after retiring, she remained a presence in the running world, holding the tape at the 2021 New York City Marathon and celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Mini 10K in 2022. But behind all these achievements was a woman who never wanted fame, she wanted fairness. She faced discrimination and ignorance from officials and reporters who told her running wasn't feminine, but she always answered with grace and grit. Her body may have slowed in her final years, but her fight never did. Nina Kusksik's death marks the end of a remarkable life, but her story, her courage, and her impact will never be forgotten. She didn't just run marathons, she ran through walls that once held women back. Denise Alexander, the beloved American actress who touched millions of lives through decades of heartfelt television, most notably in her iconic role as Dr. Leslie Weber on General Hospital. Denise passed away on March 5, 2025, at the age of 85 in Boulder, Colorado, from natural causes, bringing to an end a remarkable life that spanned more than 7 decades in the spotlight. In her final days, Denise had been staying with family, away from the camera and the studio lights, resting quietly in the comfort of loved ones. Her death, though expected due to age, was still a painful moment for those who had followed her since she was a child star in the 1940s. Her stepson shared that she passed peacefully, surrounded by care. But the weight of losing someone who had become a part of so many homes and hearts through television made the loss feel even heavier. Denise started acting as early as 6 years old, performing in over 2,500 radio shows in New York City. Born on November 11, 1939, and raised on Long Island, she later moved to Los Angeles when her father, a talent agent, shifted his career to the West Coast. By age 14, Denise had made her film debut in Crime in the Streets, and she kept working steadily, appearing on TV series like The Twilight Zone, Father Knows Best, and The Danny Thomas Show. Her big break came in 1966 when she landed the role of Susan Hunter Martin on Days of Our Lives, where she appeared in over 800 episodes. But it was her move to General Hospital in 1973 that turned her into a soap legend. As Dr. Leslie Weber, she was at the center of some of daytime television's most unforgettable storylines, including a famous love triangle and the emotional reconnection with her daughter Laura, played by Jeannie Francis. When she was written off the show in 1984, fans were so upset they protested, and her return in 1996 as a character who had survived being presumed dead was a moment of joy for many. Denise continued to appear on General Hospital through the 2000s and made several guest appearances up to 2021. Her connection with her co-stars was deep and genuine. Jeannie Francis even said that Denise helped shape her as an actress, and they shared a bond that lasted decades. Susan Seaforth Hayes, her friend and co-star on Days of Our Lives, called her a friend to treasure and an actress to applaud. And those words ring true for so many. Despite her fame, Denise remained humble and warm. She spoke often about how grateful she was to work consistently in a career she loved, never taking her success for granted. Her love story with her husband, actor-director Richard Cola, who passed in 2021, also spanned over 40 years. Denise never had children of her own, but she was a loving stepmother and a mentor to younger actors who looked up to her. In her long and accomplished life, She played everything from troubled daughters to strong matriarchs, from radio shows to Broadway, from primetime to daytime. But more than anything, Denise Alexander gave viewers a sense of comfort, strength, and truth. Her final years were quiet, away from the screen, but the memories she gave us remain vivid. She leaves behind a legacy of passion, hard work, and kindness that can't be forgotten. Denise's death marks the end of an era in soap history, but her presence will live on in every scene she ever lit up. Maya Angelou, the powerful voice of poetry and truth who left this world on May 28, 2014, at the age of 86. Though the official cause wasn't clearly defined, those close to her shared that she had been frail for some time and was living with heart problems. In her final days, Maya was in constant pain from years of dancing and battling respiratory issues, yet she never slowed down mentally. She was working on another book even as her body began to fade. Her son Guy said she left this world with her mind still sharp and clear, writing with the same strength and purpose she had carried for decades. The loss hit hard, millions mourned, and tributes poured in from around the world, including from President Obama, who called her a truly phenomenal woman. Maya Angelou was born Marguerite Annie Johnson on April 4, 1928, in St. Louis, and lived a life full of both deep pain and extraordinary triumph. She had a traumatic childhood, suffering abuse and racism, which left her mute for years. Yet she went on to become one of the most powerful voices in American literature. She survived violence, poverty, and discrimination, turning her pain into words that inspired generations. Her 1969 memoir, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, became the first nonfiction bestseller by a Black woman and made her a literary icon. Over the years, she published poems like Still I Rise and Phenomenal Woman, spoke at President Clinton's inauguration, taught university students, and stood alongside civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. Maya didn't just write, she lived. She danced, sang, acted, taught, cooked, mothered, and marched. She shared her flaws openly and her strength quietly, never pretending to be perfect, but always reaching for something better. In her later years, she taught at Wake Forest University, hosted legendary gatherings in her home, and continued to write until her final breath. Her death was not just the end of a life, it was the silencing of a voice that had lifted so many others. She once said she feared writing, but loved the feeling of finishing, comparing it to a swimmer finally placing their foot on solid ground. That's how she left us, after swimming through life's hardest waters and placing her words like stones we could all stand on. Maya Angelou was more than a poet or a memoirist. She was a truth-teller, a fighter, and a guide, and her voice still echoes every time someone finds courage in their own story. Tina Turner, a legendary singer and performer whose life was filled with both incredible triumph and deep pain. Tina, born Anna Mae Bullock on November 26, 1939, in Tennessee, passed away on May 24, 2023, at the age of 83 at her home in Kuscsik, Switzerland, after a long battle with several serious health conditions. Her final years were marked by suffering. She had lived with high blood pressure since 1978, which she admitted was left untreated for too long and eventually destroyed her kidneys. In 2013, shortly after marrying the love of her life, Erwin Bach, she suffered a stroke that made her learn to walk again. Then in 2016, she was diagnosed with intestinal cancer, and soon after, her kidneys began to fail. Things got so dire that she even joined an assisted suicide organization in Switzerland and started preparing herself mentally for death. But her husband stepped in and donated his own kidney to her, giving her more years to live. Despite the transplant, Tina's health kept declining. She wrote not long before her death that she regretted not taking her blood pressure seriously and that her body, once so strong, had become fragile. On May 24, 2023, she died peacefully of natural causes, after years of physical struggles that she bore with grace and honesty. Her body was cremated in a private funeral, but fans around the world lit candles and brought flowers to honor her. Tina's journey was never easy. She grew up poor, faced abuse in her marriage to Ike Turner, and when she finally escaped, she was left with nearly nothing. just her name and her will to survive. But she came back stronger than ever, becoming a global music icon with hits like What's Love Got to Do With It, Private Dancer, and The Best. Her raspy voice, electric stage presence, and unstoppable energy broke barriers in a world that wasn't always kind to black women. She won 12 Grammys, sold over 100 million records, and earned her place in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice. She also starred in films like Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome and had her life story told in a biopic and Broadway musical. In her last interview before she died, she said she didn't fear death and only hoped to be remembered as the queen of rock and roll, and as a woman who proved that you can build your own future no matter how dark your past was. Tina Turner wasn't just a singer. She was a fighter, a survivor, and a symbol of resilience for millions. Her story wasn't perfect, and she never pretended it was. But it was real, it was painful, and it was powerful. And in the end, even though her body gave up, her spirit will never fade. Katherine Helmond, the beloved American actress who brought laughter, depth, and heart to millions, and whose final days were marked by a slow and painful decline due to complications from Alzheimer's disease. She passed away on February 23, 2019, at the age of 89, in her Los Angeles home, surrounded by memories of a lifetime in front of cameras and on stage. Her death was not sudden. It came after years of quietly fading, a cruel and heartbreaking end for someone whose entire life had been about expression, connection, and performance. Alzheimer's slowly took away her sharp mind and vibrant spirit. And while the world didn't see her suffer publicly, behind closed doors she was battling a disease that robs people of everything they are. It's painful to imagine someone so full of energy and humor, someone who had lit up television screens for decades, becoming a shadow of herself. Born in Galveston, Texas, on July 5, 1929, Katherine grew up in a working-class Irish Catholic family and was raised by her mother and grandmother after her parents divorced. She found her love for acting early, doing odd jobs in community theaters before fully stepping into the spotlight. She built her career from the ground up, learning every aspect of the theater, and eventually made her way to New York, then to television and film. She became a household name as the dizzy but lovable Jessica Tate in Soap, earning 4 Emmy nominations, and later as the bold, sassy Mona Robinson on Who's the Boss, where she earned 2 more Emmy nods and a Golden Globe. She was also known for roles in Everybody Loves Raymond, Coach, and her unforgettable voice as Lizzie in Pixar's Cars. Katherine's characters were funny, fearless, and full of life, but in real life, she was humble, private, and deeply spiritual. She never had children, but she shared a nearly 60-year love story with her husband David Christian, who stood by her through every stage of her illness. He called her the love of his life and said after she passed that he felt like half of him had disappeared. In her career, Katherine worked with legends like Alfred Hitchcock, starred in cult classics like Brazil and Time Bandits, and left behind a legacy of performances that still resonate today. But in her last years, away from the spotlight, Alzheimer's slowly silenced that vibrant presence, reminding us how fragile even the brightest stars can be. Katherine Helmond wasn't just an actress, she was a force, and losing her was a loss not just to entertainment, but to all the lives she touched with her humor, wisdom, and kindness. Mary Tyler Moore, a beloved American actress, producer, and advocate, whose passing in 2017 marked the end of a remarkable and emotional journey filled with groundbreaking work and heartbreaking struggles. Mary died at the age of 80 at Greenwich Hospital in Connecticut, after being placed on a ventilator and suffering cardiopulmonary arrest brought on by pneumonia. In her final years, she faced a string of serious health complications, including near blindness, heart and kidney problems, and long-term damage from type 1 diabetes, which she had battled since 1969. She had also undergone surgery in 2011 to remove a brain tumor. Despite these challenges, Mary kept a quiet strength, supported by her husband of 34 years, Dr. Robert Levine. Her death wasn't sudden. It came after a slow, painful decline that friends and loved ones had watched with heavy hearts. By the end, her body was fragile, and the vibrant spirit that once lit up millions of homes was fading away. Mary's life, though filled with painful personal losses, her sister died from a drug and alcohol mix, her brother from cancer, and most painfully, her only son accidentally shot himself at age 24, was also filled with unforgettable accomplishments. Born in Brooklyn in 1936, Mary moved to Los Angeles as a child and began performing as a teenager. She started as a dancer in commercials, but quickly moved into acting, eventually landing the role of Laura Petrie in The Dick Van Dyke Show, where her comedic timing and charm made her a household name. But it was the Mary Tyler Moore Show that truly changed everything. Playing Mary Richards, a confident single woman in a newsroom, she became a symbol of independence and strength for women everywhere in the 1970s. Off-screen, she co-founded MTM Enterprises, which created many iconic shows, and she used her fame to push for causes she believed in: animal rights, diabetes awareness, and more compassionate healthcare. She was also honest about her own battles with alcoholism, quitting drinking in the 1980s and becoming a voice of recovery. Mary won 7 Emmy Awards, 3 Golden Globes, and even earned an Oscar nomination for Ordinary People, where she played a grieving mother just weeks before losing her own son in real life. Her life was filled with applause, but also grief, loneliness, and pain she often hid behind her famous smile. In her later years, her public appearances became rare, and those who knew her said the sparkle in her eyes had dimmed. Still, her impact never faded. Mary Tyler Moore wasn't just an actress. She was a pioneer, a trailblazer, and a woman who fought her battles with grace, even when they broke her heart. Her death left a silence in the world of television, but her legacy lives on in every woman who dares to stand tall, live freely, and chase her dreams with courage. Trina Robbins, a bold and fearless voice in the world of comics who passed away on April 10, 2024, at the age of 85 after suffering a stroke in San Francisco. Her final days were marked by declining health, but even then, she remained a figure of inspiration to many, surrounded by the love of her longtime partner, artist Steve Leialoha, and her daughter Casey. Trina wasn't just another artist. She was a pioneer, a fighter, and someone who spent her life not just drawing stories, but rewriting who got to tell them. Born Trina Perlson in Brooklyn in 1938 to Jewish immigrant parents from Belarus, she grew up in Queens, fascinated by strong comic book heroines like Sheena, Queen of the Jungle. That childhood obsession blossomed into a lifelong mission to make space for women in an industry that had shut them out. In the 1960s, Trina was living in Manhattan's East Village, designing clothes for rock stars like Mama Cass and Jim Morrison, and running a boutique she called Broccoli. But her heart belonged to comics. When she moved to San Francisco in 1970, she co-created It Ain't Me, Babe, the first all-woman comic book, and soon helped launch Women's Comics, which ran for 2 decades and gave countless women a voice in underground comics. Trina was also the first woman to ever draw Wonder Woman, a moment that felt like poetic justice for the little girl who once looked up to comic book heroines. Her feminist spirit wasn't just in her art, it was in her activism. She called out sexism in the comics world, stood up to misogynistic narratives, and co-founded Friends of Lulu to support women in comics. But her passion didn't stop at creating. She documented history too. She spent years uncovering and celebrating the lives of forgotten female cartoonists, making sure their contributions were never erased. Books like Pretty in Ink and A Century of Women Cartoonists are just part of her incredible legacy. Trina also wrote for Marvel, adapted novels, created female superheroes, and even designed Vampirella's iconic costume in 1969. Her life was full of color and fire. She was a model, a boutique owner, a rock scene insider, and a trailblazing artist all in one. But in the end, what mattered most was her voice, clear, unapologetic, and determined to make room for women to be seen, heard, and celebrated. Her death was a heartbreaking loss, not just to the comic book world, but to everyone who believes in equality, creativity, and courage. Trina Robbins didn't just draw heroines, she was one. Joan Rivers, the sharp-tongued, fearless comedian who broke every rule in comedy and paid a heartbreaking price in the end. Joan passed away on September 4, 2014, at the age of 81, after what was supposed to be a routine throat procedure went terribly wrong. She had gone into a Manhattan clinic to treat her vocal cords and reflux issues. Nothing major, something she'd done before. But this time, she suddenly stopped breathing during the procedure. She was rushed to Mount Sinai Hospital, where doctors put her on life support, but she never woke up again. The official cause of death was brain damage caused by a lack of oxygen, and later investigations revealed a series of alarming failures at the clinic, mistakes in anesthesia dosage, a procedure done without her consent, and a dangerous delay in responding when her vital signs dropped. For a woman who built a career on having a voice, she tragically lost her life in the very process of trying to protect it. Born Joan Alexander Malinsky in Brooklyn in 1933 to Russian Jewish parents, Joan grew up in New York with dreams of performing. She was smart, outspoken, and always felt like the odd one out. She battled weight issues and self-doubt as a teen, but those struggles only sharpened her humor. After graduating from Barnard College, she tried her hand at acting but eventually found her true calling in stand-up comedy. She started from the bottom, grinding through tiny clubs in Greenwich Village, often dismissed because she was a woman, but she never gave up. Her big break came in 1965 on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and the world instantly took notice. Joan wasn't like anyone else. Her jokes were biting, brutally honest, often self-deprecating, and she didn't care who she offended, including herself. She became the first woman to host a late-night talk show, starred in reality shows with her daughter Melissa, and spent decades on red carpets, asking the question she made iconic, "Who are you wearing?" But her career was never without pain. She lost her husband to suicide, was blacklisted after a falling out with Carson, and had to rebuild everything from scratch. Yet she did, again and again, because Joan Rivers didn't quit. Behind the sarcasm was a woman who deeply loved her daughter, adored her grandson, and made millions laugh while dealing with her own sorrow. Even near the end, in her 80s, she worked non-stop, writing books, selling jewelry, doing stand-up, and still joked about her many plastic surgeries, never losing her spark. Her funeral, packed with celebrities, was a mix of heartbreak and celebration, with Howard Stern giving a wild, honest eulogy that Joan would have loved. She was funny, flawed, and unforgettable. And the tragedy is, she didn't die of old age or illness. She died because people who should have protected her didn't. Her death was preventable, and that's what makes it even harder to accept. Joan Rivers lived loudly, laughed fiercely, and never held back. She deserved better than the silence she was met with in that operating room. But even in death, her voice still echoes, sharp as ever, reminding us to speak up, laugh hard, and never apologize for being who we are.